Joining us now, the Rams, the opposition, and they have had their way in Arizona for quite some time. The man who will be calling the action on the Rams radio network, JB Long, our guest on the Arizona Sports Line. JB, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing really well. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, thanks for accepting it. I said it's the Rams are very comfortable in Arizona. You have to go back to 2014, the last time this franchise lost a game in this state. How much confidence do you pick up on from this team heading to Arizona for week 2?
Well, it's been quite a trend, and I think it's kind of been undergirding the Rams' success under Sean McVay. There's no question about it. They've been there sometimes when they're rolling, and they've been there other times really when they've had their backs against the wall. I think of 2018 when Todd Gurley was out and C.J. Anderson was basically asked to step off his couch and rush for $170 and get them to where they were trying to go, which was eventually the Super Bowl. Again, in 2021, if you remember that Monday Night Football COVID game, where half the Rams roster was decimated and on the COVID list, and still they found a way to pull it out. Those are dire straits in that season. And again, they ended up going to the Super Bowl and this time winning it. So finding a win in Glendale has definitely been the secret sauce, but that has no bearing on what goes on Sunday. Like, I've been touting the Cardinals all spring as I think one of the most improved teams in the NFL. I think they're as well coached as they have been in my time facing the Cardinals, and I'm not surprised they wouldn't put 3 scores on the Bills and built that 2-touchdown lead. They're not there yet, clearly, otherwise they would have finished that game, but you watch what the Bills did last night in Miami, and maybe that bodes well for who the Cardinals are.
Mm-hmm. Matthew Stafford is an elite quarterback. He'll carve you up for lunch if you cannot get pressure on him. What is the state? How marginalized is the Rams' offensive line? How much of a concern is it protecting Matthew Stafford in this game?
Yeah, you, me, and Dan might be protecting him if that's what needs to happen on Sunday. That hasn't been ruled out yet. That's the state of affairs. What they did in the second half of Detroit was one of the more impressive things I've seen in adverse football circumstances. And I'm trying not to be hyperbolic, but I was at the point at halftime where I would not have been surprised if they had just turned around, handed it off, got out of there, and turned their attention to week 2. Like, that's how bad it got along the offensive line. And when you're playing Aiden Hutchinson and the Lions, that can be dangerous, not just in terms of your win-loss prospects, but in terms of keeping Matthew Stafford upright and available for the next week. So he and Sean McVay are special. Year 4 together in lockstep. They were able to solve for that in real time and do it in some really basic but also creative ways. Now, I don't think that's a sustainable formula, not for this Sunday, not for this season. You know, he can't lead the NFL in passing attempts. Cooper Kupp can't lead the NFL in targets, or the wheels are going to fall off eventually. But for getting them to where they were trying to go that particular night, I think it was a valiant effort. I would not be surprised if they get back to more basics against the Cardinals on Sunday, because what they found last year in 2 games against Arizona was really this new downhill, double team blocking, duo rushing attack identity. Week 6 and week 12, Kyron Williams had 2 of his best games as a pro, and they leaned into that largely because of the outcomes they got against Arizona's defense.
JB Long, play-by-play voice of the Los Angeles Rams, our guest here on the Arizona Sports Line. You kind of led me where I was going with my next question on terms of sustainability. The target number for Cooper Kupp last week, and yes, Puka Nacua leaves that game, but 21 targets, 14 catches. I know that's not sustainable, but what scares the Cardinals fans when Cooper Kupp is on the other side is when he's healthy and Matthew Stafford is healthy, not much else matters. How much do you think they will lean on him in the passing game? And what have those other receivers done to step up in Nakua's absence?
Yeah, well, thanks for highlighting our 4 a.m. production meeting. I'm glad the segues went just the way we drew them up this morning. That's tough to do on talk radio. Wow. Look, those kind of numbers are great for Cooper Kupp fantasy football owners, but realistically, he's on the wrong side of 30, and you don't want him getting tackled 14 times per game, period, because it's not just what he does with the football in his hands, it's what he does when he doesn't have the football, like fitting up into their running game, rooting out a linebacker or a safety. Like, that's the untold story of why Cooper Kupp has been one of the great receivers in the game now for 5-6 years. And Puka Nacua does that maybe not equally well, but he's the next best thing, and he's built for it. He's built like a Clydesdale. And even though he set rookie records for receptions and yards last year, he went to the Cooper Kupp school of Sean McVay receiving. And if there is a deepest position on this roster, it is receiver, which does 2 things. One, I think it helps them account for Nakua's absence for this next month. And 2, I think it puts them in a position where with a week of practice and rethinking this thing, given their current circumstances, they can lean more on a Tutu Atwell, who's got the best vertical speed on the team. They can get rookie out of Texas, Jordan Whittington, into more of that Puka Nacua role to offset some of what Cooper Kupp has on his plate. And then again, most importantly, whether it's a screen game or just traditional running game, I think this is a Kyron Williams kind of Sunday if the Rams are going to get the dub.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. All right, there were a lot of NFC West opponents very happy when Aaron Donald retired, none more so than Kyler Murray, who for good reason was terrified of Aaron Donald, and aren't they all? But that defense, like you pointed out, held up pretty well until overtime against a really good Lions team. What's been the immediate reactions to Chris Shula and that defense without Aaron Donald?
You know that Shaq meme from Inside the NBA where he's like, I apologize, I was not familiar with your game. I feel like that was a lot of what was going around this week with respect to Chris Shula, who's got a famous last name, but we didn't really know what it was going to be like when he takes over the reins as a first-time NFL defensive coordinator, especially when he takes the job and the greatest defensive player in franchise history decides to retire. And I think this is where we learn a lot more about what life after Aaron Donald is like, because you're right. I mean, you highlighted one of the critical elements of this game, which is I'm not naive to the fact that Kyler Murray has played decent stretches of MVP caliber football for the Cardinals. And then twice a year, Aaron Donald walks into his life and tears the thing down to the stud. Yep. Aaron's not walking through that door at State Farm Stadium on Sunday. But I do think what the Rams have found in, 2 off seasons now worth of preparing for this eventuality is 4, maybe 5 young pass rushers who collectively are ready to kick that door down. It's going to look different. It's not going to be as dynamic. You're not always going to be able to lean on it. But after a decade of having a cheat code, now you got to do it the hard way, the collective way.
Yeah, one of those draft picks, first-round pick. Hey, and the Rams don't have first-round picks very often, but they used one on Jared Verse. Good numbers in week 1. He had a sack, a lot of pressure numbers. How did he flash in your mind in his NFL debut?
Yeah, if I'm following the pattern, about 6 years from now, the Rams will draft another first-rounder, and his first name will be Jared. Jared Goff,
exactly.
Long absence. Jared Verse, long absence. Look, I'm glad he's on the Rams because he's a nuisance. I say this lovingly, endearingly. If he were on another team, I think he would drive me nuts. He's an effective player. He's a loud talker. He does a lot of the things that really disrupt what you want to be as an offense and on the edge. And I think the edge is where this game could be decided, fellas, in both directions, with the Rams not having answers at either tackle spot and the Cardinals really struggling to get pass rush last week against the Bills. And then conversely, I think Verse against Paris Johnson's a great matchup. He aligned exclusively over left tackle. And then if it's Beachum stepping in at right tackle this week, he's a vet. He's been here before. But Byron Young is also off to a great start, his second year on that edge. So I think whichever team does a better job, either puncturing the pocket from the edge or holding their water at the tackle position, is probably going to have a leg up in this one.
A little tidbit for you, JB, for your broadcast maybe. Jared Verse, after the draft, came on our afternoon show in tandem with Trey Benson, whom the Cardinals took in the 3rd round, and threatened to take the paint off of Trey Benson's helmet the first time they met. So something to look for on Sunday maybe.
Wow, I love that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's really good. MJD, my broadcast partner, had Trey Benson as his favorite back in the draft. So I know he's behind a really good one for the time being, but their time is definitely coming.
Yep. JB, always good to talk to you. Thanks for the time. We appreciate it.
All right. Sarah's the best. Give her my my flowers, and have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks. JB Long, Rams play-by-play radio voice, joined us on the Arizona Sports Line.
Thanks for watching Bickley and Marotta. Click to see the latest Bickley Blast and hit the button in the middle to subscribe to Arizona Sports.